Hello, hello. Hi, Nicole. Hi, Darren. Hope you're both well.
Hello.
Hi. And yeah, Nicole, I can't say, Darren and I were so excited to have you join us for this Media Lake interview series. Yeah, the whole team was. And yeah, it'd be great just to kick things off, please. If we can learn a little bit about you, your role, your experience. Yeah, just a little elevator pitch would be great, please.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I'm excited about this. This, I think, might be my first. Is this a podcast? Is this an interview? I don't know. Might be my first one, if it's a podcast. I am a marketing transformation leader. I span like FMCG, lifestyle, beauty, luxury, even some, consumer electronics and streaming services, which is really great. That sounds like a lot to cover, but it's just more out of curiosity and or making the experience with that I have with the brands in my life better. So, any brand that I've worked on, either as a person within a creative agency or in-house in the marketing team, it's a brand that I actually use in the day-to-day, and I specifically targeted them just to understand the magic. And I think that's what this conversation is going to be about today is how does a brand make magic, and how do I, as a marketing transformation and creative operations background, how do I help enable teams to make magic? So that's me.
Absolutely. What a wonderful introduction. I completely agree with that. Yeah, love it. So to kick things off, and Darren, please jump in if you have questions as well. Nicole, obviously you've moved from high-paced agencies to leading transformation in-house at iconic brands across luxury, consumer goods, electronics, automotive, media, services, lifestyle, F&B, FMCG. The whole kind of spectrum, which is fantastic. How has marketing transformation, creative operations changed in that time, would you say?
Yeah. So the biggest thing, and I mean, this is my opinion, this is my lived experience, but if we start with my background in creative operations, it felt like a utility on its on a good day. On a bad day, it felt like a pipe or a conveyance, like connecting, what was shiny and creative to, deep knowledge that might be within the business if it was data insights or whatever marketing insights. And I think because of that early in my career, I kind of like pushed against it. I felt kind of like, wow, I'm going to be blocked if I stay in that bucket. So I should probably either upskill myself, get opportunities that force me into a different type of role, or just give it up altogether, because eventually if you only focus on people, process, technology all the time, it felt kind of limiting. Today I would say is, and it's for me, but also I see it in the organizations where I work, is that creative operations now they're the brand engineers, if you will. And even the roles that sit underneath a creative operations sort of they have changed. Whereas, when I started out, I think my aspiration, I was like, one day I'll be the COO of a medium-sized agency, and it was like I would be like, project manager, producer, business analyst, and all of that. Like things that are lucrative, but you don't actually go to Thanksgiving dinner and say, this is what I do. You can't even explain it. Whereas now I am head of brand, and making those meaningful connections with the consumer, or with trade and wholesale partners, sharing the story of the brand, and putting out those content and those experiences that anyone would experience with the brand. And I just so happen to have a creative operations background. So that's what I mean by you become a brand engineer. And now I'm like, I could be the COO, or I could go and become a brand chief in 5 years' time.
Yeah, and that combination, puts you in such good stead, especially with how like technology has advanced and probably changed both sides of the role, I imagine.
I would say technology is the only way I got there. I'm not going to lie.
Nicole, you talked about making magic, which I love from a brand perspective. Do you think because creative ops can be sometimes in the background, do you think that either marketing leadership or senior leadership sometimes undervalues operations because the impact is maybe less visible because it
100%. So I'm so sorry, because that is the pain point. That's where it started back. I know I don't look like it, but it's like I'm 21 years on. And that's why I think I pushed against the box, because I was like, no one sees me. And that's worse when you are doing something and you're a person who looks like me, a petite woman, a woman of color, highly energetic. It's like no one's seeing. They're seeing everything else but what's happening. So that's why I pushed against it. But there's this one time when marketing leadership and CEOs, they see operations is when there's a problem. When there's a problem, then it's all about operations. And you might be an operations person who was like, I warned you about this. I did this risk assessment. I said that these things, we could do these things. I consulted and proposed, but the decision at the time wasn't to move in this way. And then I think there's another flip side, that if you run operations really, really well, then they'll look at it and say, oh, it's not necessary. And then they'll start chipping away at that team, which is all well and good, because these opportunities, no offense, are a dime a dozen. And as long as you're flexible and you don't mind switching sectors, if you don't mind switching between agency side or brand side, if you really look in curiosity and really want to learn, it's fine. But yeah, it's really hard being in a place that's basically thankless. Everyone will say that it's a thankless job, whatever job they have, but it's like really thankless.
I know from firsthand experience, Nicole, and I imagine you would agree that creative teams often work in a constant state of urgent requests. I don't know if anybody gives you the time you really need to do something well. But what inefficiencies do you think leaders underestimate simply because many of these things are becoming culturally accepted as just how things are?
Silos, like from a team standpoint, and then where information is. And it's quite wasteful, and I think leaders like rely on a person, or particularly maybe a team, to be the holders and the fountain of the knowledge, but that's also just not sustainable. In the long run, it might work when you're in a heat, like I've just spent 18 months in a heat, and that's fine to have the brain trust, whatever. But if I had more access, quicker access. I have the access. It's just not there. It's not fast in some cases.
I totally understand what you're saying. Go ahead, Ophir.
Cheers, Darren. Yeah, Nicole, maybe you've answered this a little bit, but you describe your work as forging world-class creative, right? How do you balance that need for the magic, the creative side of things, with the machine, kind of the operations, without killing that spark? And I guess, how do you find that balance?
Yeah, so this will probably be the most opsy thing I will say, but creating a system, like easily repeatable, can be done across multiple channels, doesn't matter. And maybe I always try to make it 3 steps like that. You know how Apple was like, you only need 3 steps to start your iPhone. So I was like, I'm going to apply that to my everyday work. My teams that I lead, they're like, no, they poke holes. They're like, no, there's this, there's that. And I'm like, fine, we can make 5 to 6 steps if you like. But the same, and these steps are like gateways, like decision gateways, because I'm going to say we're in 2026, because we basically are. This is the most educated, most digitally enhanced, most intelligent workforce that the world literally has ever seen. So there's absolutely no reason to bog things down in documents and step. All the teams know how they're working. So if we can just have clear, like, we're going to do these 5 things over and over and over again, it frees up so much space, because then it reduces the admin. And there's some things that completely automate admin, like developing a deck to work on creative ideation, or timing plans. I like cried when Microsoft Project was made obsolete, because I was like, how am I going to be able to make a project plan in 5 seconds? And I had to like dig deep to find an Excel version, which is not sexy in the creative space. But yeah, if you have this system that just kind of is like the way people are wayfinding through the decision making and the collaboration, then they have so much time to have space to think. And then that actually allows them to be magical in their own special way.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes you need like a box, don't you, to work within, so you become even more creative, right?
Well, boxes mean you got to fight your way out, you know.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, it's a trail. It's a hiking journey, getting to the peak.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Brilliant. And then I've got the next question here, Nicole. It's like, what would you say is like the biggest mistake enterprises are making in their creative ops?
Oh God, I guess maybe how we're decision making. Approval's totally worth it. Like they stop some bad things from getting out in the world, or things that just won't hit at this time. Like they're totally worth it. But again, each team works in a certain way, so then they have, certain tools or documents that they want to use. They're not all the same. And I think by not focusing on, if we go back to the system, on how we make decisions together and finding a way that we can do it together and in a really well-informed way, once again, we're just end up wasting a lot of time. Like I've spent anywhere between 5 to 7 days just to get a yes sometimes. And I'm like, that's way too much in the world today. And the speed, the agility that we require, like 5 to 7 days, we're already on to a new drama. So literally the world has already moved on. So it just takes a bit too long in that sense.
Absolutely. And one thing that we think about a lot is licensing, compliance, and asset lifecycle. How much time does a creative team lose just trying to figure out, can we use image, or where is the source file? So we talked about approvals a bit, but kind of be interesting to hear your thoughts on that side of things.
Yeah. So in my experience, it depends on the setup that you have. So if you've got the money to pay for a librarian, God bless you. And that means it probably takes, I don't know, like 30 minutes. So that's one thing. And that assumes that the librarian also has like an amazing system that, they can literally have, what was it? The Dewey Decimal System that we were taught as children. They've got the 2026 version of that. That's it. It'll probably take them 30 minutes. Then, and I've worked in organizations like that. Then you've got organizations where it is on a team, multiple team leads, their responsibility to be able to house that information for their teams. And they'll probably spreadsheet it out. Or if one of those teams happens to like own the dam, then they'll be like, we're doing our metadata, but like never fully doing the metadata because that takes so much time. And in that sense, it's kind of like, you could be, well, one, you're waiting on people. You're waiting on people to be able to answer your question. And those people are hopefully in brainstorming sessions and not heads down trying to do some documents. And so you might be waiting anywhere from, 2 hours to an entire week for them to get back to your response, because they're also like, oh my God, this is so boring. Why are you asking me about an asset from 5 years ago? I felt that way. Let me say that. I'm speaking about myself. I've often become the human like encyclopedia in an organization, and someone will ask me something like that. And I'm just like, oh my God, go into the system. But the system isn't lovely, whereas the person is.
Yeah.
And then I've had times when I've been, the person at the agency, working with my client, and it's taken my client 2 weeks to give me that information because they've had to probably go through the processes that I've just described amongst another agency or amongst someone else within their organization to get the information back to me. And again, that's not agile at all. And my brief is probably 2 weeks long, and I will look like I haven't done what I needed to do in that time period that they gave me 2 weeks, and I couldn't move because I couldn't get the information from them.
Yeah, and it just sounds like it's just siloed and it lives. Yeah, it's not good to have it all in one person's head, is it? As
one
nice
person's head or one person's laptop, because I once worked with that one person's head, but it was in their laptop and they went on vacation and that laptop went off the side of the boat. And we're like, well, that's awesome. You never saved anything in the cloud.
Oh, wow. Doesn't sound ideal at all.
No.
Nicole, as we talk about efficiency, and you were talking about how you get things done, and the hot button, of course, nowadays is all about AI and what it's doing. And I'm always interested to see what creative professionals and creative ops professionals like you think about it, because can AI, for example, ever contribute to the magic that comes with branding and advertising, or do you think it's purely kind of an accelerant to the creative humans who use it?
Well, I am probably more the person who leaned into it sooner, faster. First, from a personal standpoint, just like run my home economic situation to bring it to work. And I see it as enabling creativity, like full stop. It's not, it's going to take your jobs. It's like, it's going to take the work that you maybe don't like doing or it's high volume but repeatable. You have to do it forever. So it's like move that away so you can just spend more time, and then it allows more time for those marketing professionals to become multi-skilled because they can learn something else, which ultimately means they contribute more to the team, the organization, and they feel like they've contributed more. No one's like, I feel great about working for this company because I did 50 spreadsheets and timing plans and 1,000 decks. They like feel good because they're like, actually, I contributed to this magic and I got to see it in real time and be connected to those creative leaders. So that's how I see AI. And it also, personally for me, I use it to find my blind spots because I'm like, I know everything after 21 years. But then I'm like, I think I'm going to do this. And then I will be like, what have I missed? Because I'm so in my thought. And I see that for me, but I also love it when we're using it to ideate.
Yeah, we often talk about data simplifying decision making, especially if you're using AI to generate that information. But how do you see data expand? Have you seen data actually expand the creativity output rather than constrain it?
I wouldn't say I've seen so much constraint. So about 2 years ago, I was wondering, how can I help concepting faster? And I went to the data team and was like, can we just look at all of our campaigns over a certain time period and give me some information about what worked well and why, just based on what you can see out there in the ether. And how can I approach it and put this into my creative brief so that we're leveraging information that seems real from real, we're looking at organic results, we're looking at ECRM results, we're looking at how those assets were received just out there if you're looking, and what the magazine articles were saying about it, like really pulling deep and far to give me some sort of pillars, if you will, to add into creative briefs for us to work from. But then I used it in another way of, well, we don't know everything. We don't know if there's something bubbling. And I'm going to pick on a place that I always pick on, Akron, Ohio, that if you use past knowledge to develop amazing content, amazing storytelling concept, and you go through and execute it, but then it's going to go down like a lead balloon in Akron, Ohio. I also want to know that, because then it means I can find something else to do for them and put this other piece of content in the world somewhere else. So it's quite important in that instance of, telling you what you maybe have not nailed in the past, and then also helping you to avoid some pitfalls in the future.
Sure. I mean, thinking about technology, you've implemented new tech stacks, before. What's the moment a creative team has truly adopted a tool, not just because they have to, but because they really want to? Have you seen that spark before in the teams you've worked with?
Yeah, I mean, yes. And I know that they have adopted it because they want to, because they'll use it. It's very simple. I know the tool was wrong if they didn't use it. If they came and they were like, yes, we did the one-on-one session, this is what it means for you, and walk them through that, take a video tutorial, you can always go back and watch it again, or you can ask me, this is what it means for you, and then they never logged in again, then it's not the right tool. I've actually worked and led a couple different marketing studios over the past decade, I would say, because before I wouldn't have had enough insight to view, but over the past decade, where it was just common knowledge that like this team definitely use our tool, but the creatives don't. And it was just like, that's okay. And in fact, instead, the organization, we would be like, okay, well, we'll hire someone into their team and their whole job is to use the tool for them, so that team is actually participating in our tech stack. Like, that was the solution, rather than maybe it's the wrong tool.
We hear that. Sorry, yeah, we hear that a lot. Like, just creators want to work the way they want to work. It's very hard to change them.
Oh, funnily enough, they want to work the way they want to work, but then also they were the first ones using, in my experience, they were the first ones using AI, and then it was all the other teams that were like, what is this? Why are we doing it? No.
Brilliant. And I'm just curious, how often, when you implemented a new tool, what was the strike rate? Like, how often would people use it or not use it, or just kind of curious to understand that.
Oh God. I would say if you wanted 100% uptake across the organization, I have not seen that personally. There's always going to be a small holdout, even if it's just more from the standpoint of they're like, well, my team will do it. The amount of times I've spoken to leaders, they were like, okay, yeah, that's great for my team. And I'm like, but you are a part of your team. So I've never seen 100%, but I think the best I've seen is somewhere between 60 and 75. And I'm like, that if we were voting, that would pass whatever the act is that we were voting. So I just was like, that's good enough.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, no, I'd agree. And Nicole, if you could snap your fingers and fix one broken part of the modern marketing workflow instantly, what would that be?
Yeah, I'll go back to the decision making, because some people will believe in the decision you're trying to propose, and some people need data. And also how people see information will change the way that they decide. You can always change someone's mind, but it's just how you present the information to them. And my biggest sticking point with any sort of technology is does it look fun to use? And is it easy to use? I recently was at a meeting, not yours, just for the record. This was about 5 months ago. I was at a meeting in my own office about an AI tool that was supposed to help rapid ideation, rapid content creation. I was like, love this for me. Let's watch it. And so they were showing me everything. They were showing me the end result. And I was like, oh, this is great. This is great. I won't have to do photo shoots for like a certain type of content. Love this. And then they showed me how it actually would happen. And I was like, I love technology and I am so lost. This feels like NASA. I was like, there's no way. And I was like, and then how am I going to actually give this over to the creatives who are even more like NASA phobic than I am? I was like, no offense to NASA. NASA's great, but like you need degrees, like high level. And so if the tool was like not I can easily like visually see what's going on, especially in the creative space, like there's more neurodivergence within the creative space that kind of leans towards more the space that visually is going to be better than numbers, columns, XML feeds, like that's just not going to work to get the best out of them. So I mean, that's where I stand. If I feel a joy of using it, then I'm like, most likely the rest of my team will as well.
Nicole,
go for it, Darren.
I was going to ask a follow-on to that, Nicole. If creative operations had a seat at the table equal to brand and media, which I agree should happen, and at least in my business that they do, but I know it's not always that way. How do you think marketing decisions would look different if creative operations was at the table at the earliest point at inception?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you as well. I've worked in organizations where they are at that ignition point. I think it's more also in how the creative ops shows up, because if it is like some places I was where it was almost I don't want to say wet blanket, but it was like, this is what could go wrong. This is what could go wrong. This is what we have to do. This is the stringent gateways, that sort of thing. Then no one's going to listen to them, and then they don't get invited the next time. So as long as it's approached in a way of like that what we're trying to get out of the first line end user, which is those other partners and ideation and merchandising and technology, because they also have to be there as well, since they're the ones who are going to give us what we need. As long as it's really able to convey how everything will be easier for these teams, then it's fine. And I think that's what the most important thing to come to the table is, like, this is how we're making life easier. But then it goes back to what I said earlier, which is like, once you make things easier, you become obsolete, which is all right, which is 100% all right. I was speaking to an HRBP person like a year ago, I think, and I was just like, oh, like, well, if we solve this and we solve this, and I was like, what happens? And they were like, once you solve a problem and it goes away at Amazon, they just promote you. And I was like, what? And I had never heard that before. It was never my experience either. It's like, what I saw is like, once you solve the problems, not needed. And I was like, okay, that's another way to look at things.
Sure. Talking about staying ahead of the curve, I'd love to know what skills you think are going to define the next wave of creative operations leaders. Is it technical literacy? Is it creative empathy, business acumen, or something entirely new?
Since creative ops is close to, they're the ones who get a lot of business intel, more than necessarily other teams may have. If I compare them to, creatives, which, to be fair, the organizations that I've most recently worked in, even over the past 7 to 10 years, actually art direction sat within creative ops. So I'm being a little bit unfair, but if we're talking we're talking producer, project manager, program manager, like resource manager, studio manager, if you're talking about those people traditionally held within creative ops, they have a set of information that most people don't have. And so I would encourage anyone in that space to figure out a way to create a new revenue pipeline or a new service for wherever they're working. And you could do that in an agency, or you can do that brand side in marketing. But and it works in brand side and marketing. You're essentially like trying to create a revenue generator that isn't reliant upon the consumer buying the service or the product that already exists. And I like to do that revenue generator as a way to put more money back into my creative team to spend for those kind of creative moments for the consumer. So that's what I would see. And in the agency, it actually is about just opening new revenue pipelines to get more clients. But that's the easiest thing. I think someone in creative ops can really make themselves indelible to the future of the business. And you can, of course, do like what I've done, which is upskill into, brand marketing itself and be able to say, okay, I'm creating this brand image, but then I also can produce it myself if needs be. And then I also can work on its actual launch and learnings as well.
Nicole, that kind of revenue generator bit is super impressive. And I'm sure a lot of organizations would love to understand a little bit more on like how, what are some examples of that? Because to me, that's like any business in the world would love to make, other streams apart from just, selling the product. So if you can shed some light, I'd love to know. Yeah.
So I'll use like a really basic example. For me, it feels basic, but I worked in like a PR and comms company, and it was very much about creating experiences that people can go to. And when you do that, you have to find a space, and then you have to dress the space, and you often end up buying things, accumulating. And as a creative ops person, you obviously have the information on like what you bought, where the money's going. And you also, in that instance, are most likely responsible for where you store those things once you don't need them any longer. And then you know how much it costs to do so. And so seeing something like that, I was like, this is absolutely ridiculous, because it costs a lot as you accumulate. And so I was like, maybe these things should be rented next time instead of purchased. And then it turned into this whole, let's rent these items that we're dressing spaces with, as opposed to going out and finding the next one. It takes a lot of considered effort to make sure you get something that actually can be rentable and in the future and make sense and can be used across multiple brands. But I just was like, guys, why don't we try this? Because then ultimately I was just trying to find a way to subsidize the cost of storage. But it created this whole other way to a little tiny cottage industry inside of the agency to be renting. And accidentally it ended up being sustainable. Wasn't even thinking that. Yeah. Just wanted to pay for storage. And that's like a very basic way to look at things.
Amazing. I love it. Yeah, it's being very crafty. I love it. What is one piece of advice that you'd give to a creative ops leader or marketing transformation person stepping into an organization on day one?
Yeah. So I think I kind of touched on this, or maybe I'm going to sound so sad where I'm like, the creatives ops lead, they're there when the problem, they're like a wartime general, but then you don't need them once peace has been restored. So if someone's out on the market, if an agency is out on the market looking for a creative ops leader, they're doing it because they're secretly in crises mode. That's what that signals. And in order to obtain one of those roles, you have to go through the whole recruitment process, selling a dream, saying that the problem you've shared with me confidentially in our chats is easy. And I'll tell you why with this simple 3-step process, this system. And so they've brought you in once you get hired and you start. Once they brought you in because you've sold them the system. And yeah, you're going into an organization where people have been there at bare minimum. Even if they were there 6 months before you, they know 6 months more than you do. But a lot of times, if you're going into these leadership roles, you're speaking to people who have been there for years before you. So their knowledge base is really deep. But again, if the organization could have found the people inside, they wouldn't have gone to market to find someone. So you really have to go in with humility and say, hey, this is what I see as an outsider and as a lover of this brand. And thank you so much for letting me into this room. This is what I see as an outsider and how I think we can move forward. However, you know way more than I do. And so I need you to poke holes in what I put down here. And together, we're actually going to make something bigger and better. But I need to just start with what I know now, and I need your help for me to and us to go forward. And as long as you do that, because what you're taught actually to do, which is fair, I get it, is to go in, observe, make an opinion, present it, da 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 da. But that's not why you were brought. You were brought because you showed something that they didn't see inside. So just be honest, humble, but honest, and show that to all of your leads, all of those stakeholder interviews and first connections, and then you will together build something better. But it also helps them see that you're there to make life easier because you're like, I've already come with something, so we don't have to start from scratch.
Yeah, I love it. Pre-planning, collaboration, and then just like shortening down the times. Yeah, sounds amazing. I'd hire you. Do you have any controversial marketing or creative ops opinions, Nicole?
Yeah, I mean, I've already said it, so it's not, maybe it's going, I felt very much early in my career that there was too much documentation, too much paperwork, even though we're in a digital age, but too much that needed to be updated. I can remember like blocking off Friday afternoon to do the weekly status report, an afternoon to do a status report, which today I'm like, wow, if Nicole 20 years ago had the tools we had today, she would own the world. So we'd hope she owned the world. So yeah, I think there's too much of that, which then leads back to like, well, how do you show value as a person who works in operations or transformation? Because like that is the history of the role, is like you show your work by showing these systems and making them look like something that like, yeah, we could do it, but I'm the one who can help you do it, sort of thing. And this is this paper, and like this is this report. And I worked at a place where I was responsible for the commercial team's league table. So I published at the end of the week who the top sellers were and like recommendations on how they could improve. And I just was like, that too would take me hours, even though I was using pivot tables, and it would still take me hours because I'm combing so much data. So yeah, I don't know.
One of the things one of the things, Nicole, I've been talking to a lot of creatives about recently is the creative brief, which doesn't seem to have evolved all that much in the however millennia it's been around. But if you could reinvent the creative brief for the modern marketing era, especially when you think about creative operations role in it, what would you remove and what would you add that most teams never consider?
Yeah, so I would, because a lot of times I don't think the right data is in the brief. And when working in brands that have anniversaried campaigns, like it's obvious in the fashion world, there's like just 5 or 6 campaigns that happen every year, regardless. And I think the wrong information is shown in them, and it doesn't really get to the heart of the matter of how a consumer was moved to take the action or do the behavior that was wanted. So I'm being way too vague. So in an example, like the creative brief might be like, oh yeah, we sold 10 million pots of honey last year, and this year our goal is 12 million. And it's like, great, thanks for that. you always want to sell more, and like that will be the end of the data conversation. And I'm like, no, I want to know how we sold those 10 million last year, and why the consumers moved, and at which point they were moved, and like what did they say afterwards, because was it a good year for honey or was it not a good year for honey? Like there's that sort of thing. So it would be a lot more actionable data within the brief, and it would also take in the zeitgeist. So again, combing the world out there, what's the sentiment and the zeitgeist feeling right now? Because instead, the brief, to your point, Darren, it's like the reason to believe and the core values, and the consumer looks like. We know what the consumer looks like. They want the highest value for the least amount of money and pain. That's it. Don't tell me it's yummy mummies who want to have a healthy tea in the morning and that's why they need honey. So yeah, I think it literally would be, it sounds simple by saying it's data led, but like it's also how it's presented, because no one wants to see tables and graphs either. They want to see pictures.
Yeah. One of the things I've been talking to a number of CMOs about, certainly in like Fortune 100 companies, is that, and I'm sure you've seen it, with the technology today, marketing teams and certainly creative teams are generating more content than they ever have before. I mean, we have enormous volumes of content. We might have done 20 years ago 5 to 10 campaigns a year. Now we're doing like 500 campaigns a year. So what's interesting is only a fraction of that really moves the needle if you break it down. So how do you think creative ops should evolve to help brands separate kind of the signal from the noise and focus on what actually creates impact?
Well, firstly, it's about convincing people about those suites of assets. I've very much been guilty of producing 200 plus assets for a single moment. So I very much understand where it's the top 10 that really are driving something. But also, to be fair, when a volume is that high, it does end up in a phased delivery. So it makes sense that the assets that are delivered first actually do have a further reach than the ones that are delivered later. So then it's kind of like, okay, as a person who wants to support the transformation of marketing and the storytelling is, well, then how do we decide which assets are phased out first versus last, and like what the role of those assets actually are and what channels are they actually going to live? So that's one thing. And then secondly, I would say, is asking why. If it's not about phased rollout, so if every asset dropped at the same time, but still it was like 10, well, then why? What is it about those? Which is why, I went to the data team and was like, can you figure out why these images work better than those images? Like truthful and many data sets. And then lastly, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, do you think there's a break in the creative feedback loop? Because
100%. Yeah.
With that kind of content production, do you ever find out how it did?
No, from an art direction standpoint, they don't. But also, I will go back to, it's because they don't, because the tool that they use or the tool that's created isn't, I'm going to use the word sexy. It's not pretty enough for them to use, which is why I'd worked with a data team before to make some sort of tool where I was like, it has to be pretty. You just have to be able to like drag and drop. and then it just like comes up with like really simple, like green means good, red means bad. You don't need to know why. You just need to understand that it is telling the truth. It 100, but then they're not in charge of creating the brief. That's my job. So it's also my fault that they may not have that information. And it's also like a compliance thing. I've worked in places where it's like, maybe there was like some sort of IP things, an idea, because everything is just a reinvention of something else before. And maybe an idea skirted way too close to something else that had been executed before. And then it's like the compliance team, the legal team, they're the ones who have to deal with, the person who thinks they were the original creator. And again, the creatives never know that. They never know. And it's so important that they do have tools to like help them see in the world, like, yeah, you have these references, but how are you going to pull them together to make a new pizza? Not one that's already been created before. And I think this is back into the what can a creative ops person do to help is being brave ultimately with that set of data that they do have, being brave enough to kind of make the leadership teams pause when it's something like, no, we really, really, really are spending our money the wrong way. And here's why. But again, their tool has to help them and identifying that, and then also being able to form that business case in a way that's easily consumable.
Brilliant. I know we're kind of running close to time, but I've got one final question, if you don't mind, Nicole. Just, do you have any recommendations for our viewership on any resources, materials, books, podcasts that they could refer to or kind of learn from that you kind of love?
Yeah, so I'm going to go against what I just said about things have to look sexy, because I've been like reading this thing. I probably will get the name wrong. I'm going to have to, in real time, pull up my Gmail to try and find this. I think it's called TLDR. And essentially, it's because for the past couple of years, I've been like deep into how to improve myself in AI. And how else, what can AI really be used? Yeah, TLDR. Get that nice little email. It's the ugliest email. I'm scanning it right now. It's the ugliest email I've ever seen in my life. But it really does summarize on a daily basis. This is how people are using AI, but across every sector and in those sectors, across every sort of like organization, from the marketing or the creative agency to the actual brand itself, and then within those organizations across teams. So there's always like some little nugget to figure out like how someone has used something, and I'm like, oh wait, they did that for them there, I could probably apply that over here, even though they were a scientist and I am not.
Amazing. Cool. Thank you. That's everything for me. Unless, Darren, you've got anything else?
No, I thought that was amazing. Thank you, Nicole.
Fantastic. Yeah.
I learned a ton.
Oh, well, thank you so much, guys. And I'm glad we had that chat, and that I could give back, because you definitely gave me pause and a lot to think about when we met last week. So I'm glad I can return the favor.
Oh, thank you. Too kind, Nicole. No, it's been fantastic. Thank you for the time. It's been great.
Thanks.
Yeah.